You want more monsters? I'll give you more monsters. If the comment section from our last best horror movie monsters video is any indication, we could keep doing these for a long time. I might not agree with every choice posted down there, but I do see the merit in each and every one of your favorites. Unless you keep coming back just to trash It Follows, and then we are enemies for life. But putting blood feuds aside for a moment, let's return to the age-old tradition of talking about how cool monsters are. Hell yeah. Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host, Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 best horror movie monsters, part 2. If you're interested in a graveyard smash, check out our top 5 scary creatures playlist right over here for some additional monster mashing. Phenomenal! Let's get to it. Coming in number 5, we've got the Tar Man from The Return of the Living Dead. Postmodernism is alive and well these days, with all sorts of media referencing itself and everything around it. Honestly, we're probably postmodern at this point, but then again, I'm no philosopher. Back in the 80s though, it was still a pretty new idea. Being aware of tropes and trends and foregrounding them wasn't as widespread as it is now, so this movie was nuts. Having intelligent zombies who use emergency service walkie-talkies to essentially order more food to their location is hilarious. Giving the undead an impetus for eating brains is genius. And then there's the Tar Man. I don't know of any horror movie since has made a monster that can generate terror by simply moving around as well as Tar Man. God, this thing is gross. After accidentally cracking open a canister of secret military chemicals and cadavers, some lovely gas shoots out and the man inside begins to thaw. At first it appears that the chemicals are just bringing things back to life, but in reality they're also making the undead much more resilient. And Tar Man is extra special because he's been stewing in this stuff for years. Would you just look at him? Sitting in trioxin for that long has just absolutely ruined this dead man. All of his muscles and skins have been jellified and are oozing and dripping off his desiccated skeleton. This doesn't mean that he's weak and useless though. He's still got a full set of horrifying teeth and can bite clean through some skulls, which he does. And the fact that he's super resourceful adds some terror too. When Tina hides in the storage locker and bars the door, he manages to set up a winch and tear the door clean off. We don't see nearly enough of Tar Man, but he makes great use of his screen time. The shambling walk, the desperate call for more brains, and the greasy goopiness of it all make this a classic movie monster that will forever stand the test of time. Coming in at number 4, we've got David Kessler from An American Werewolf in London. Usually the monster isn't your main character, but I guess old Dave Kessler didn't get the memo. He starts off as a victim, attacked under a full moon on the moors, but slowly realizes that he will soon become a monster in his own right. This point is driven home by his constantly decomposing pal too. What a movie. There's a lot of discussion in the horror community about what the best werewolf movie is. You know, you've got The Howling, you've got Dog Soldiers, and of course, there's American Werewolf. The transformations and subsequent rampages of all these different lycanthropes have affected people in different ways over the years, but it always seems to come back to the John Landis classic. And for good reason. Rick Baker came on as a special effects specialist and absolutely killed it. Funnily enough, he might not have ended up on this set if things were a little different. Baker was supposed to do the effects in The Howling, but was brought onto American Werewolf by Landis. Rob Bottin then took over on The Howling and did an excellent job in his own right. But boy, the David Kessler werewolf transformation will go down in history as an all-time great monster morph. After denying that he might be a werewolf for most of the movie, the full moon rises once more, prompting him to start his transformation. And it is a painful one. Real sudden too. At the end of a long day spent indoors, Kessler manages to settle in with a book. But too bad so sad, it's time to become a werewolf. Set to Sam Cooke's rendition of Blue Moon, it's almost funny how painful the change is. Bones crack and snap as they extend within his skin, and he screams in agony as he watches his body become a perverse mockery of the human form. Awful hairs sprout up and his face distorts, and Mickey Mouse makes a surprise appearance. After the transformation, we're treated to some wonderfully restrained werewolf rampages, but once we see the wolf in all its glory, it becomes clear as to why this is considered a classic. From the claustrophobic tunnels of the tube to the absolute mayhem in Piccadilly Square, poor Dave Kessler really makes a case for putting him down. No silver bullets necessary. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Cenobites from Hellraiser. Pinhead usually gets all the glory, but not today. Every Cenobite is special. These universe-roving, pain and pleasure-delivering, bondage gear-wearing demons from hell are some of the most memorable and fascinating creatures in the creepy canon. Clive Barker makes incredible monsters, so this should come as no surprise. There's something visceral about the Cenobites, and because there are so many different types with all sorts of different appearances, you can just guarantee that one will stick out to you and haunt you for a little while. Pinhead's the classic choice, but what about good old Butterball? I love this greased up Patrick Star looking dark sunglasses wearing lunatic. And if teeth are your thing, there's Chatterer. Good lord, this guy's got a f***ed up face, and those hooks holding his face back, you know, it'll forever freak me out. And of course, the humanoid Cenobites are just the beginning. There are also things known as engineers, which are essentially gigantic sawtoothed bloodthirsty masses of flesh. The beauty of the Cenobites is that there are so many of them, and if you find yourself in their sights, you should probably just resign yourself to fate. Nobody wants to get melted in an attic and then later come back as a fleshy skeleton, but you make a deal with the Cenobites and you get what you deserve. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Xenomorph from Alien. Apparently a lot of people really like these perfect killing machines. I can't count the amount of times that I saw it pop up in the comments, and you know what? Well deserved. There aren't many monsters out there as iconic as this Nostromo Nasty. The name literally means strange form, and boy, this is indeed a strange form. Of all the alien species to roam the universe, this is likely the deadliest. Once they find a host, they fire an embryo in it, which will then later burst out in a most gruesome fashion. Depending on the appearance of their host, they can take on many different forms, all of which are incredibly deadly. A good quote to describe the awe-inspiring killer instinct of the Xenomorph is from Ash. You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism. Its structural perfection is only matched by its hostility. Seriously though, Xenomorphs are hardy, stealthy, deadly, and bloodthirsty. They'll kill whatever and whoever dares to exist nearby. Simply extraordinary. Add in one of the most fearsome visages of time, designed by the legendary H.R. Giger, and you've got an incredible monster. And finally at number 1, we've got Pennywise from It. If you're afraid of clowns, there's a big chance that Pennywise had something to do with it. Either version too. We love Bill Skarsgård and Tim Curry in this house. They both bring different terrifying things to the table. We won't just focus on the actors though, let's talk about what makes Pennywise so scary at his core. This maniacal trickster has haunted the tiny town of Derry for ages, returning every 3 decades to devour the locals. Sure, he shows up as a clown in most places, but that's not his true form. No, Pennywise is just one iteration of a terrifying monster that will manifest as your worst fear whenever it gets the chance. And if that's not scary, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I guess you have no fear at all. Good for you, but not all of us are totally devoid of emotion, and therefore, Pennywise is scary. He can take on the form of a creepy old woman, he can become a gigantic gnarly spider, he can haunt your dreams and drive you to unspeakable acts. As long as there is fear, Pennywise is essentially all-powerful. Plus, and I hate to come back to the clown aspect, actually no I don't, what am I saying? In his most common form, he is nauseating to behold. Clowns are just strange, right? And Pennywise is an especially ugly clown with overdone grease paint accentuating his features and lodging him securely in the uncanny valley. So whether you're afraid of the mime's colorful cousin, enormous arachnids, or your dad, this marvelous monster will find a way to exploit your fears and ruin your life. You might think you've escaped, but just wait 30 years. It'll all happen again. Rock and roll. More movie monsters for you marvelous folks at home. What'd you think of the list? Did I cover some that you expected on the first list? Have you seen all these movies? What's the most iconic horror movie monster of all time? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more titillating ones from the top 5 SCP monsters that can never escape montage part 2. James Wong says, I'm not young, I'm in my 40s already. Well, sure, compared to me you're not young, but you're definitely young to someone. Wait till you're 60 or 80, make it to 100, then you can talk about being unyoung. Myo Thane says, why do you talk so much? To quiet the voices in my head. I better hope I don't go silent anytime soon. Samantha Stansbury says, the way you called it an ink monster actually helped me find a movie I loved as a kid, Little Nemo. Fantastic. It's tough to remember stuff like that when Pixar essentially claims the name Nemo forever, right? You know, everything else just kind of gets buried. Prep for It says, the fennec fox is so cute I would totally get high and sadly die with all the hugs. Worth it. Damiano Smith says, number 1, somebody's mother-in-law. Don't flinch, you'll have to marry her. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I hop in a mosh pit with 2 broken ankles, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more peerless freaks. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Hello, bonjour.
You can a little faintly hear them.
Okay, well let's just power through it then.
Yeah.
Worth it. Nope.
No.
Worth it. At first it appears that the chemicals are just bringing things back to life, but in reality, there's a lot of, there are also things known as engineers, which are, nobody wants to get melted in an attic and then come back later as a, which will then later burst out in a most grotesque, wow. Why is it so loud out there? It's so echoey too.
I